Hey group leaders, and welcome to our video series on navigating conversations. I'm Pastor Kyle, the pastor of spiritual formation and connections here at Christ Wesleyan Church. And if you're joining us, whether you're a group leader or if you're just learning some more skills on how to navigate conversations, this is a great video series for you to take a look at. Allison Ager is going to be helping me out with this video series to provide you with some training on how you can navigate some of these conversations. So she'll handle a lot of the initial videos, and then you'll be able to see me later on when we start to address some specific topics about you and your small groups and how I want to help you out in the midst of those conversations as well. I hope you enjoyed this series. Feel free to leave a like and a comment below and reach out to me if you're interested in learning more or putting these into practice in your small groups here in the future. Feel free to reach out to me at kyle.roberts@cwc.life, or you can call or text 570-273-0088. But without further ado, let's get into our first video of this series.
Most of us have some sort of device, a smartphone or an iPad, that we can pull out within seconds and be able to communicate with anybody. They are powerful little devices that can do an amazing number of things. In fact, we're using some of that technology now for this video. But there's no denying that these little devices have had a big impact on how we interact with others. There are certainly positive things about technology that's available to us, but we also have to consider some of the negative effects that it's had on us, both individually and as a culture. We're a lot more distracted, and our attention spans have decreased. We lose something when a lot of our communication is done through a screen rather than face-to-face. To some degree, we lose that interpersonal connection. That's why some conversations really shouldn't be had over text messaging. They require something more personal. When we communicate through a screen, we tend to focus more on communicating what we want to say and think less about how our words will be received by others. That's the problem you often see with social media debates. We're more concerned with communicating our own thoughts than with understanding someone else's perspective. And because it's on a screen, it's easier to forget that there's a real person on the other side who has their own perspective and experiences and feelings. So we might word something a little bit more strongly than we would if we were in person, or it may simply come across that way to the other person because other factors that influence communication aren't there. Things like tone of voice and body language. This dynamic has influenced our in-person interactions with each other. There are numerous books written about the topic of conversation, and I came across two book descriptions that I think describe our present circumstances. Today, most of us communicate from behind electronic screens, and studies show that Americans feel less connected and more divided than ever before. The blame for some of this disconnect can be attributed to our political landscape, but the erosion of our conversational skills as a society lies with us as individuals. And the only way forward is to start talking with each other. And the second one is this. In today's highly charged social and political environment, we often don't know how to talk well with others, especially with people whose backgrounds differ from our own. In this book, the author addresses why conversation has become such a challenge in the 21st century and argues that it is perhaps the most needed spiritual practice of our individualistic age. I think that's fascinating, the idea of conversation as a spiritual practice, and one that is needed in our day and age. Why would that be? In Matthew 22:36-40, Jesus was asked a question, "Which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And he replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these two commandments." These verses tell us that living a life surrendered to Jesus is all about loving God and loving others. So loving others needs to be one of our primary goals. It's an extension of our love for God. But here's the thing. People feel loved when they feel heard. David Augsburger put it this way. Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. People feel loved when they feel heard, when they feel understood. Sounds simple, right? But it's harder than it sounds. Being a good listener is surprisingly uncommon and is actually countercultural, especially when we don't agree on something. So let's put these two thoughts together. We feel loved when we feel heard, but much of our communication these days takes place over screens, devices, and social media. We use this technology as a means of community and connection, but it's actually caused a decrease in our interpersonal skills. We focus more on communicating our own thoughts than we do on listening to others. So what you have is a whole bunch of people who are speaking and not listening, and no one really feels heard, understood, or loved. And when we don't feel loved, we protect ourselves and we become defensive. We interact with others in a way that is searching to be loved rather than in a way that gives love to others. And the cycle just continues, with everyone looking to be heard and loved, and no one actually feeling heard and loved. Until we, as followers of Jesus, can break that cycle by loving others through listening. Here's one more book description I came across. In this day and age, the art of deep listening is a superpower. If you can make someone feel heard and important, you are on the highway to their heart. The ability to have conversation, and especially to listen well, is a needed spiritual practice. And the good news is that it's a skill that can be developed. And it's an opportunity God gives us every day to show love to others. Spend some time reflecting on your own experiences in conversation. How have you seen or experienced the impact of technology on communication, either personally or within our culture? When have you experienced a time when you felt loved because someone really heard you?